Prayer's the ultimate liberation from loneliness. She hears every word and she madly, she licks every word. She swallows every word. Her tears drop in every word. It all matters infinitely, not because I'm a pathological narcissist, but because my interior feeling that my life is a project of infinite significance to the infinite intimate is true. And so we're willing to stay in and find those rare friends, my friends, that you can have a real conversation with. And sometimes it's hard and sometimes it's confused, and who cares? Who cares? The greatest friend is a real conversation. So we got like a huge prayer day. This is actually, we've been moving towards this day. But just before that, I just wanted, if I can, I want to just share with you something. I had the best series of conversations. I'm not going to tell you with who. We're going to keep that as a secret. But I had best series of conversations with two people who are kind of just central pillars, kind of holding one mountain together. And we did that thing which is impossible. Right? We did that beautiful thing for which the world is created, which is very rare. And I'm going to give a particular compliment, right? One of the only people I was ever able to do this with was Barbara Marx Hubbard, right? Barbara is like a rock star, right? Just this great human being who died a bunch of years ago, right? Who was kind of the primary futurist. Buckminster Fuller said she was the most informed futurist alive. She was a very dear friend. She's both a student of mine, a friend of mine. She did Holy of Holies with me. She was a partner, right? She was co-chairperson of the center. And one of the things I just madly loved about Barbara, besides her infectious enthusiasm, Barbara was wildly enthusiastic, number one. Number two, she told me often that she had run for vice president. So I would tease her as we would get on the phone. I said, Barbara, did you ever run for vice president? I just wanted to check. That's the way I teased her. And she would say, yeah, that was our kind of running joke. Did you ever run for vice president? Could you maybe tell me about that? So we would laugh about that. But we did a Holy of Holies like every week until literally a couple of days before she passed, right? And in every Holy of Holies, right, sometimes we would chat, but often we would go at it. And I was quite challenging to Barbara, right? It was not an easy ride because Barbara said to me, I don't want an easy ride. I want to become better. Like, I want to be better. And so, we had this kind of hilarious moment where I had just come up with the term Homo Amor. Okay, it's like a really funny story. I just come with the term Homo Amor, which is this word that we use for the new human. So I had just come up with the term Homo Amor. And I didn't want to have to write a book about it yet. I wanted to spend 3 or 4 years studying it. So I shared it with KK, all right, and with Zach Stein and with Barbara. And the four of us got on the phone and we said, okay, we're not sharing this name with anyone. Let's just hold it privately. We all kind of completely agreed, right? The next day, I think Kirsten sends me a thing that Barbara did the next morning. And Barbara says, like, with full ecstasy on her course, I just came up with this new name called Homo Amor. So I said, Barbara, I called her. I said, what the fuck? What's that? And of course, I want you to get this. She wasn't like stealing the name. That wasn't Barbara at all. She was excited. Right? She was excited, right? She was really excited about the name. And she had kind of merged with it in that way that Barbara did. Barbara decided she would merge with something. She got like wildly excited about it. It would almost like become hers, but in a very beautiful way. Right. And so it took us a half hour. I remember like on the call, it's like, Barbara, 1 second. Like, you can't actually tell someone you're not telling anyone. And that means you're going to tell only the 400 people on your course. And so we had wild kind of back and forths in trying to establish what's the right container on many levels. What's the container of integrity? And she wanted to know how to go the next steps. And she was like fierce about saying like, wow, I succeeded in so many things. And Barbara succeeded in so many things. And then she said, but I failed to gather a stable community around me that could actually survive the test of time. And why? And she was fiercely committed, like deepening. And I don't think I'd ever seen before, Barbara, anyone with that fierce level of commitment to actual evolutionary growth. And so Barbara didn't just talk about conscious evolution. Is everyone getting this? She actually lived it. She actually literally lived it. And literally the last Holy of Holies I did with her, like 3 days before she went into a coma. And she went into a coma in this insanely kind of painful moment, right before one mountain when I called her, and she had actually gone down. She woke up from the coma. I told the doctor, try and wake her up. She actually literally woke up. She'd already gone under. She got on the phone and said, Mark, and like the most beautiful voice, said, Barbara. And she went back in. It was the last word she spoke. Right? It was, and I flew right after one mountain, to be by her bedside. And we spent the last 3 days, she didn't wake up. But just a couple of days before this, we were in Holy of Holies. We had this fierce 45 minutes. And I was actually felt like she wasn't feeling great. And I wanted to kind of let her off the hook and not press a point. She said, no, I want to be better at this. I want to evolve. And she had this passionate, radical, absolute commitment to fierce truth, fierce evolution. So I want you to first just get that about Barbara. Just a great thing she lived it. She lived it with everything she has. And friends, just between us, this is just between us, a little private moment. I have fairly good friendships with lots of the people where the public people, you can't put anything real on the table. Right? Everybody's posturing. You can't have a real conversation where you can kind of cut through the posture and really get someone to say, okay, let's evolve. So that's who we are. So I had, right, with two people I'm very close to, 2 conversations, right? We actually had 3 conversations total, right, this weekend, where we kind of went to the mat, right, of trying to get clear about something that was going on. And we all stayed in, and we all made it to the other side, and we all deepened, right? And it was one of those conversations that never happens. Because no one can stay in. And I trusted both people to, both the first person and the second person, to stay in the conversation. And I would not trade 1 second. I wouldn't trade 1 second, not even a second, of all 3 of those conversations. They were kind of the best moments of my life. One of the best moments of my life, literally. Then I swear that in public swearing, meaning I'm not like a clever thing to say. No, for real. When we can stay in, right, and love each other so much, right, that we can say everything, but then say it again, and then be more careful about it, and get more precise, and then get really clarify, right, what's there to say, what's deeply true about what I desire, what's deeply true about what's needed here, right? That's a real conversation. That is prayer. That's what prayer is. So the word prayer in the original Hebrew is palal, P-A-L-L-A-L, palal, palal. And palal is a particular root. And if you happen to be one of those weird people who reads kind of 13th century philology texts, I'm reading this 13th century philological text, right, by David Kimchi, and he's tracing the root word of prayer to palal, P-A-L-L-E-L. And palal means, let me consider reality deeply. It's a reality consideration. Does everyone get that word? I want to get that word. It's a great word. It's a reality consideration. Right? That's like the highest form of conversation. We're going to do a reality consideration. That's what prayer is. And in prayer, what we do is we clarify our relationship to reality. Who am I? What is reality? What do I need? What's a real need and what's a surface need and what's a pseudo need? What needs to be said? What's actually true? Right? That's the quality of prayer, right? It's this intense conversation that the finite has with infinity. Does that make sense? Finitude, that's us. And so reality's having, right, a me experience, and I am having this very particular conversation with reality in which I do everything to clarify and clarify and clarify and clarify until me and reality understand each other perfectly. But it's not reality as an abstract, stay close with me. It's not abstract reality. It's not third person reality. It's the infinite person of reality, looking at me, knowing my name, and we're talking back and forth. We're talking until we get it really clear. And I say something once, then I check it. Did I really mean that? Was that really accurate? Was I interpreting reality, or was I relating what actually happened? Right. And that's where, because we're always interpreting. We're always giving them, but what's actually going on? And so what I do in prayer is I go through a process of what the erotic mystics call Beirur. I clarify and clarify and clarify. And you know why I can do that? Because I know that reality is madly in love with me, right? And sees my beauty and knows my beauty and knows my depth, right? And knows my goodness and knows my truth. So reality never thinks I'm a liar, right? I didn't think, when I spoke to Barbara, oh my God, well, how did you claim Homo Amor? I knew Barbara was like a total rock star and she was excited, right? I wasn't like, I got caught. Then you can't get caught. Reality never is trying to catch you out. We all grew up with the sense of like, we're socialized and we're afraid that someone's going to say, gotcha. And then we have all the people, sorry, some of the trauma stuff is true, but we have all the people who kind of traumatized us and did gotcha for a long time. And it might be uncles or brothers or fathers or spouses or bullies in school. It's the whole gotcha, right? There's a gotcha choir that we all, does everyone know what I'm talking about? There's a gotcha choir kind of, which is always playing in the background, right? And it switches, right? The gotcha choir, right? The ultimate gotcha choir. And we're always afraid that someone's going to catch us. But when I'm having a conversation with the infinite intimate, right? It's the most intimate, precise conversation. And here, now stay close, friends, okay? A conversation's only precise if is only intimate if it's precise. I'm lonely, right? If the experience of the person I'm talking to, right, is such that they think if I'm talking to someone and I know they're not quite getting what I'm saying, then I'm lonely. Is that true? And when I have that rare experience, and I might want to repeat something 10 times, even though I said it 10 times already, because I really want that person to get it. And they might be a little frustrated. Why are you repeating that for the 10th time? Because I want you to get it. And then you get it. And it takes time, right? Conversation is the ultimate commitment. Does everyone get that? Conversation is the ultimate commitment. And most of us have checked out of most conversations because we're afraid to have them because the gotcha choir is always playing. Does everyone get that? So prayer is the ultimate conversation. That's what prayer is. To be able to have a conversation where we don't step out, right? That's what prayer is. Prayer means that she loves me so much, she won't step out, and she knows everything about me, and I can actually open up all those doors in the mansion in which I live, which I've closed. That's what prayer is. Prayer is a siach, says Nachman of Breslov. It's the ultimate conversation. Okay? But it's like crazy deep to get that. And Nachman writes, and Nachman of Breslov was Franz Kafka's favorite mystical master, right? He says, and Kafka loved him. Nachman says, when you pray, you're literally talking to your best friend. That's this quality of prayer, right? You're literally talking to your best friend, right? I remember, if I can just share with you guys, I'm going to just share with you two things. One is I remember, and I've mentioned her in passing, and I don't know what her maiden name is, and I shouldn't, but I remember this woman, Betty Ehrenkrantz. And Betty, if you're listening, I apologize. I haven't seen Betty Ehrenkrantz since I was, 16, 17. But when I went to high school in New York City, right, and I went to an all-boys seminary high school, and I was quite observant of kind of the classical Orthodox law, which meant no physical contact with the opposite sex. That made high school really great. But in any case, right there it was. Right, and I was completely kind of, for 14 to 18, kind of was very, very, very committed to that law. I was raised in that system. And Betty and I kind of fall in love. She's in the girls' seminary school. I'm in the boys' seminary school. Okay. And just, I'm telling the story. Ben and I have never shook hands or hugged. That's, in other words, but we would meet after school and we would go down in Riverdale, New York, which is part of the Bronx. Anyone know where Riverdale is? Riverdale, New York is part of the Bronx, right? Mark, and there's the Spoit and Doyville station. And you go to that station and then you kind of walk down to the Hudson. And then you kind of walk along these old broken kind of railroad things on the Hudson. So Betty and I would walk, down, a little dangerous, kind of over the tracks. And we'd walk down the Hudson and we would talk. And I would say I was born in those conversations. Like for real, I was born in those conversations. Right? I mean, I can literally feel them right now in this very second. And she received every word I said. And I received every word she said. And it was the ultimate conversation. It was the ultimate prayer. And we would get real precise. And it's really where I learned conversation. We would get so precise until we got it exactly. So we exactly got it, right? Exactly. And then we would be just ecstatic, erotic ecstasy, because we understood each other. Now I'm going to tell you just a little secret, okay? Just between us for a second, okay? Making out would have gotten in the way. Just saying. We're so convinced that we got sexual stuff worked out. It was actually the parameters of boundary, which are complex, and the way orthodoxy works them are complicated, and they don't actually work the way that they're taught. But the idea is actually correct. And as you create a boundary for a time, and by creating a boundary, something emerges in that boundary. What emerges is erotic conversation. Life is about erotic conversation. That's what life is. It's a series of erotic conversations. So life is at its core, the monad of life. We live in a storied cosmos, and the subcategory, the subset of story is conversation. So it's a conversational cosmos. So it's a storied cosmos, which is a series of conversations. 2, 3, they're not chaste conversations, they're erotic conversations, meaning we're tumescent, we're pulsating, we're alive, we're vibrant, we're penetrating each other, receiving each other, right? But they're not sexual conversations, right? And that's when we reduce an erotic conversation to one that you can call some number for, and someone talks to you about, various body parts that they have and you have that you don't know for about 3.5 minutes, and you have kind of a spasmodic convulsion of the body that you then feel completely terrible afterwards for 2 days, I would not call that erotic conversation. I know what it is, right? And bless it. I'm not shaming it in any way. I'm not shaming it. Great, totally beautiful. But when you dissociate an erotic conversation from the context of actual erotic conversation, we're in Eros together, we're receiving each other, we are liberating each other from loneliness. Did you get that? Now stay close, okay? I want to tell you something crazy beautiful. Crazy beautiful. So in the book of Leviticus, chapter 25, all right? Right, there's this text in the 3rd book of the Solomonic mystery canon. There's this text which says, you hear this divine erotic voice, and the text says, Gerim v'toshavim atem imadi. You are strangers who dwell with me here. Right? What does it mean you are strangers? Right? What is God saying? So everyone interprets the text that God is talking about, or the divine voice is talking about, human strangers, right? Who live in the world, who need to find each other. But this great master, Ephraim of Sudaka, who is the grandson of the holy Baal Shem Tov, Israel, son of Sarah and Eliezer, right? He reads it differently. He says, no. He says, God's talking to the human being. And he says, oh my God, when you pray, we get to talk. And I'm a stranger. I'm a stranger, and you're a stranger. And we get to meet each other and talk to each other in prayer. Right? Gerim v'toshavim atem imadi. You, human stranger, are strangers with me, the divine. Right? God, who is the infinite intimate, has to be willing to give up divine perfection in order to manifest reality. God gives up the infinity of divine power in order to embrace the infinity of divine intimacy. Does everyone understand that? That's the most shocking realization of humanity. And how do you know? Because all of us are here in this conversation. And we are all imperfect vessels for the light. All of us, except for one person here. I can't say the name. Okay, but the rest of us are imperfect vessels for the light. And by the way, that one person's not me. Actually, the Messiah is with us in this conversation, but I can't tell you who it is. That's just a little parentheses between us. Right? But except for that person, they're on screen, but don't look. I can't tell you who it is. But everybody else in this conversation is an imperfect vessel for the light. Like, huh? And then we get to come together and have a conversation, and we get to actually understand each other, right? It's like, huh? Like, huh? Like, wow. Wow. Right? Like, wow. Erotic conversation. And it's different. They change, they shift. There's a subtlety, there's a nuance, and there's a depth. And I was saying to KK, right, to my beloved Christina the other day, and we were just talking about how there's a quality of certain kinds of conversations that we can only have now, so many years later. There's a subtlety, right? Conversation's a fine wine. It ferments. And when we can make it through the difficult conversations and stay in, all of reality literally dances in undulating ecstasy. That's the world we live in. We can stay in the difficult conversations, right? They're okay. We get to love each other madly, right? And the gotcha choir, we quiet that choir. You want to know what's great about Leonard Cohen? Right? We've talked about Leonard Cohen in the years past. I haven't talked about him a lot in the last 2-3 years. What's great about Leonard Cohen? What's fantastic about Leonard Cohen? He's actually working really hard to describe reality as it is. Does everyone get what I'm saying? And he's trying to, it's like, after all the witnesses are gone, what's really happening? Sometimes all love is you learn how to shoot at someone who outdrew you. Who writes shit like that? Right? That's right. Right. And when you read, by the way, I have Leonard Cohen's poetry. I have all of his poetry here. When you read his books of poetry, he's trying so hard to have a clear conversation, to give the clearest account of reality that he can. That's what an artist does. But the artist has to give that account of reality within the context of the knowing that reality is a field of outrageous love and we are madly in love with each other. That's prayer. So prayer is a conversation between infinity and finitude, but not finitude in this kind of generalized sense, but finitude as reality having a Daniel experience. And all she wants when she's talking to Daniel is to know everything, right? About the inner quality of how reality configures as Daniel. And and Daniel may think, oh, this is my personal life. But he thinks that at the surface, underneath, Daniel, in his clearest moments, is madly in love with his beloveds, whoever they are, and with Daniel. And he's committed to this Daniel project because he knows that it matters infinitely. And that his knowing that it matters infinitely is not pathology, and it's not a compensation mechanism. It's actually a disclosure of the ontological dignity of reality having an irreducible, unique experience. So prayer is not just conversation, it's conversation that liberates from loneliness. Okay? Now, I'll tell you something. The therapeutic conversation as it exists today has to be a conversation that liberates from loneliness. And I'll tell you something. The only way that therapy can ever heal, whether you're doing formal therapy, anyone who's working with people one-on-one, the only way it can ever heal, ever, if it's rooted in a sense of radical love. Anyone who thinks you can take love out of the therapeutic process and is going to write essays about transference and countertransference can basically hang up their hat. Unless your student, your client, your beloved, the person you're coaching, whatever the structure is, unless they actually have a genuine sense, you don't have to say I'm madly in love with you. They need to just know it and feel it. They need to feel this unimaginable regard that you have for them. And they have to experience in your presence that they matter infinitely. And that you're listening so deeply that you actually can liberate them from loneliness. But first you have to listen. Do you get what I mean? So when we hear the text in the Solomonic liturgy about the divine role in prayer, the first text is God is shomea tefillah. God hears every word of prayer. There's not an immediate saccharine promise of a response. Forget the response. The first step before the response is I know that my words are being heard. That is the structure of cosmos. That's not a faith assertion. I want everyone to get that clue. That's not faith. That's called the second person structure of reality. Reality has three primordial perspectives. And those three primordial perspectives are first person all the way down, right? My first person experience all the way down. My second person experience, meaning the space between us. And in the space between us, we have the capacity to have a conversation. And a conversation means in a conversation, I sacrifice myself. There's a sacrificial act in conversation in which when I'm talking, you're fucking listening. And when you're talking, I'm listening. That's why when I talk to someone and they interrupt to talk, I say, stop. And then they say, no. They kind of put their hand up because they want to say something. I said, I don't want to talk. It means we're not talking. Slow. And I will listen to you forever. And we're not trying to be right. We're trying together to look at a horizon. How can we get to a deeper truth, to a deeper goodness, to a deeper mutuality of understanding, right? And we stay in the conversation fiercely, right? Like, that's prayer. That's what prayer is. Prayer is the ultimate liberation from loneliness. I'm in a conversation with the infinite. And I want to finish just with an image. I was for quite a few years of my life, I was deep in the formal world of kind of the clergy. And particularly, I was trained as an Orthodox rabbi, and I got a number of ordinations from the chief rabbin in Israel. And, I studied in a kind of program for being a dayan, a judge, kind of, other parts of Jewish law. And I did the formal ordination in a couple of places. And then I got another one about a decade ago. Ordinations come, ordinations go. As theology changes and shifts, right? And I've ordained quite a few students. Some of that went well, some of that didn't. But no, so the word of ordination is a whole world. So I had taken a pulpit in a particular in Florida, and it was in Palm Beach County. And the way that the Orthodox world works is that when the rabbi finishes his silent prayer, then everyone kind of moves on. Because the assumption is the rabbi must be having, the deepest, most wild, intense, unimaginable concentration. And of course, that's usually not happening just between us. The rabbi is usually sitting there. He's like 25 years old and he's saying, fuck, how long do I have to wait to walk my 3 steps back when I'm done? And you're like forced. There's this intense social pressure. You have to pray the longest because you have to have the most concentration. So it's this very weird scene that no one acknowledges is happening. Now, I happen to like to pray. So that's something I had going for me. I love to pray. And one of the reasons I cut down prayer at a certain time, because I would just pray for a long time. I can just get lost in prayer for hours. I love to pray. So it wasn't that hard for me, but it was still a little weird because it's instead of being able to get lost in the ecstasy of prayer, you got to kind of track all the cues that are going on in the synagogue. So that's just a little insider baseball on orthodoxy from 30, 40 years ago. In any case, so there's one master named Levi Isaac of Berdichev, right, who has this butcher in his town. Now, Levi Isaac, like, ecstatically loved to pray. He was like this master of prayer. But no matter how long he prayed in the local kind of shtibel, in the local kind of prayer hall, this butcher, this boor, this unenlightened, this ignorant, right, ordinary layperson would always pray longer than he did. Now, guys, this is a real problem. He's the master. He's supposed to pray the longest, no matter what he did, no matter how ecstatic he was. The butcher was always still there praying and had not taken what's called the 3 steps back. So he's like, he does not know what to do with himself. No matter, he cannot outpray the butcher. So finally, he asks his shamash, his beetle, he asks his beetle to get this butcher for a meeting. So the butcher comes in, it's late at night, he comes in and the Rebbe, the master, Levi Isaac of Bishop, he says, like, what's wrong with you? You're crazy. He says, Favus, why am I crazy? Ich gewein shuckling and you just keep praying and praying and swaying and praying, and you won't stop praying. No matter what I do, you pray longer than I do. So the butcher says to him with tears in his eyes, he says, there's really no one I have to have a conversation with. My wife, conversation stopped a long time ago. We go through the motions, but I can't go deep. My children, not really. My friends, we do a little perfunctory. You say hello to me and you're very warm. But when I go before the Melech Malchei HaMlachim, I go before the King of Kings. I go before the infinite power that invests all of physics and all of superstrings and 100 trillion galaxies exponentialized, all of infinite power, right? All of infinite intelligence, all of infinite consciousness, right? Past, present, and future, right? Sits in a chair. And as long as I'm willing to stay in the conversation, so does she. So of course I pray longer, right? You have so many people to talk to, and I have almost no one to talk to, right? But that's prayer. That's prayer. That's what prayer means. It's like hot, right? Prayer's the ultimate liberation from loneliness. She hears every word, and she licks every word. She swallows every word. Her tears drop in every word. It all matters infinitely, not because I'm a pathological narcissist, but because my interior feeling that my life is a project of infinite significance to the infinite intimate is true. And so we're willing to stay in and find those rare friends, my friends, that you can have a real conversation with. And sometimes it's hard and sometimes it's confused, and who cares? Who cares? The greatest friend is a real conversation that you can go all the way. And so I just wanted to celebrate with you that I happen to have this weekend 3 real conversations. One of the greatest weekends of my life. And what a crazy delight to be with everyone. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.